Hello and thank you for joining us. My name is Ben Sheen. I'm a member of Stratfor's editorial team, and I'm joined here today by Latin American analyst Reggie Thompson. And we'll be talking a little bit about the ongoing peace negotiations between the Colombian government and the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. So Reggie, talks between the Colombian government and the FARC obviously stalled with the capture of the Brigadier General who strayed upriver and got taken by the FARC rebels themselves. But at the moment in Havana, Cuba, where the talks are taking place, they're currently trying to reboot or restart the talks. Where are they now?
Where we're at right now with the talks is that a delegation from the Colombian government has left for Havana to try to restart the talks. They're meeting with, this is the delegation of people that has been at the talks for the last 2 years, and they are meeting right now with a delegation from the FARC. These are mostly mid-level FARC commanders that left for Havana in late October from Colombia, and they're discussing right now on how best to restart the talks. Now, moving forward, the major sticking point in the Havana peace negotiations is the issue of what FARC members will pay for what crimes. Obviously, there are many arrest warrants out for the FARC, not only the FARC leadership, but for numerous members of the FARC rank and file. And executing these arrest warrants against the FARC leadership and lower-ranking members is obviously an unacceptable solution for numerous members of the guerrillas that are at the negotiating table right now. And so that's a major sticking point that will have to be overcome in the negotiations. Right now, the details of why the general was seized and how he was seized have not particularly come to light. The current story, the one that Brigadier General Alzate publicly released to the media, states that he was going upriver, up the Atrato River in Chocó Department to go inspect some renewable energy projects there being carried out by local municipalities. Now, this is far out of protocol, out of the security protocol normally exercised by the Colombian military. He was only being accompanied by 2 other soldiers and by a local lawyer that was a go-between between local governments and the military authorities. And you have to remember, he was the highest-ranking Colombian military commander ever seized by the FARC. Traveling like this would have been out of character for any Colombian general, particularly the commander of the Titan task force as he was.
Especially in a high-risk area as well.
Yes, exactly.
The area he was operating in was known to be heavily occupied by FARC rebels.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned that there is a little bit of a discontinuity between the senior FARC leadership and the more junior commanders. Do you think a miscommunication could have led to a junior commander taking the initiative and actually capturing the general? And does that indicate maybe a fracturing between the higher and lower echelons of FARC itself?
It's definitely a possibility. Right now, what we observed during the first few days of the Colombian general's kidnapping was that the FARC in Havana, the negotiators in Havana, did not immediately issue a public statement and instead remained silent for a couple of days, reputedly sending word back to Colombia for the 34th Front, which is under the command of the Ivan Rios bloc. They sent word back to that particular unit to clarify whether or not they were holding the general. But what we observed in the days after that and in the weeks after that was that the FARC acted in a unified manner and negotiated with the government for the release of the general. In other words, even if this originated as a local unit on the initiative of a local commander, it was very clearly later on taken up by the entire FARC as a whole.
So clearly the capture of the general stalled the talks. Do you think it's enough to do catastrophic damage? Is either party going to have to change their position? Where do we actually go from here?
Well, the thing is, both parties are going to have to, at some point, make concessions to each other. The government is particularly going to most likely have to concede in at least some manner on the issue of outstanding warrants. We've seen some moves, for example, in the past few months, we've seen some moves out of the Attorney General of Colombia, who has said, who has made public statements such as the FARC should have alternative penalties other than jail time. In other words, when he's referring to FARC leadership, obviously, not necessarily the rank and file. This idea is far from popular in Colombia. Opinion polls show that this is not a popular solution with Colombian citizenry. And what we've seen is that FARC talks are going to have to go to a public referendum at some point. And the government is kind of constrained in the sense that it cannot agree to something that the majority of the population will reject. Now, obviously, this could change going forward. Public opinion is not necessarily going to remain static, and the closer the FARC and the government come to a deal, the more willing the public may be to vote yes on this issue. But definitely the government is not going to be able to agree to something that a majority of the population right now disagrees to.
And it almost seems that therein lies the difficulty, because any zone of possible agreement is going to have to see concessions from the government. They're going to have to make some concessions that the FARC will find amenable. Otherwise, they won't close the distance to agree in the negotiations either. So at some stage, both sides are going to have to give, right?
Yes, most definitely. This is definitely going to have to happen, and it's most likely going to happen over the next few months. As of right now, the government has the tentative deadline for these talks to end completely as of October 2015. That is because as a Colombian Constitutional Court decision in the past month allowed the referendum to be held in October 2015 to coincide with regional elections. Now, this is far from a sealed deadline. It's not set in stone. This is subject to change. But if the government is to keep that deadline, we're going to have to see some movement over the next few months, given the lead-in time of and the logistics of organizing such a referendum.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, that's all we've got time to talk about now. But as you can see, this is a topic with a lot of different moving parts and a lot of different angles that can play out over the next few months, and certainly leading up to the elections in 2015. This is something we track closely, and please look forward to further Stratfor analysis on the subject in the near future. Thank you for joining us.